Okay. So those are three ways that you can think about, how am I going to fund growth?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
This is, in my opinion, a recipe for disaster. So I'm going to keep it simple for you, James. If I give you $100, okay, for you to start a startup company today, in the tech space, on a startup company, how much of this $100 you will take for product development, yeah? And how much money of this $100 you will take to marketing, sales, to ask the client if this is the product that they want to buy, X, Y, and Z, just to give an idea to the entrepreneurs listening the broadcast when they're gonna manage resources in a startup, coming from you that you have several exits, yeah, so you do know what you're talking about. I'm giving you $100. How you split this money, product development, sales, marketing, and this and that. So
I'm going to tell you, Harry, I'm going to tell you that in the early stages of my business, 100% of my time and money was spent on sales.
I agree with you.
And the reason I say that is because I have to be in front of the customer. I have to build a real deep awareness of what it is they're asking for, right? Sometimes we go into our markets and we don't really accept that there's competition. And the reality is there's competition everywhere.
100%.
Okay. and so the reality is, well, if you acknowledge that there's competition, but the customer is willing to share with you the things that they wish were different, right? I wish these things were different with those who are in your competitive space. You really need to pay attention there. Because you learn a lot, right? And so this kind of drives to the heart of what I would refer to as cost of sales. Okay. And there's a lot of people out on the internet talking about compensation and compensating sales, and is your sales too high? I think the reality is, if your compensation models, if you're at this point in your life where you're actually paying someone else other than yourself to drive revenue into the business, okay, then that should be a performance-based compensation plan. Now, as you get bigger, so let me just say this, the percentage, to go back to your original question, the percentage of revenue and the cost of sales in my business in the early years was very high, abnormally high. Why? Because I valued growth in transactional volume and margin volume more than I did the efficiency, quote unquote, of the cost associated with the transaction in the initial stages. As I grew and the dollars got more and the revenue got spread across a multitude of team members, you could drive efficiency into that sales cost in a lot of different ways. Okay. But in the early years, you're just trying to capture market. And so I think it's a little bit misleading to be talking to an entrepreneur saying, you got to get your cost of sales down really low. No, look, I'm not advocating that you pay sales team members for lack of production. That's craziness. And that's what I mean.
Especially in the early stage. The early stage can collapse the company there and then.
Yeah. What I'm advocating, though, is when in the early years, when an account manager and a team member is selling on your behalf, compensate them really, really, really well. And the reason I did that in my early years with my business was because I wanted to drive what I call this desire to just continue to grow the book, right? I want to grow the book. I want to grow the book, and so by doing that in the early years, like I said, in the later years, when you have a bigger company, more revenue, more team members, you have lots of ways to drive efficiency and drive profitability into the business because you have more to work with. So if you take your $100, example, you probably spending 60%, 70% of that, but especially when you contemplate that it may just be you and one other person. It may just be a very small team. You're going to spend you should be spending the bulk of your time understanding the customer, what they want, and finding opportunities, right? Building that pipeline, finding opportunities.
So for everybody, listen up. Yeah. So I agree 100% with you, James. 500% with you. But look, someone that has several exits in the industry, just share with you something that I hope that you can actually even listen this broadcast twice and try to interiorize that all the resources, time, money that you have starting up is exactly to do what James is describing here. You need to go out, talk to the people, talk to your potential clients, tell them that you're thinking to launch this product, if they're gonna buy, what form they're gonna buy, how much they're willing to pay. Put all your time and energy on that process, yeah? And if you can't even pre-sell it, and then with that money, maybe you can develop, you start to develop a product or something. But
so look, Harry, one thing that I think is really smart that you said, okay, is time. I want to take a minute and just talk about time. Okay,
because we're talking about resources. The $100,
yeah, time
also goes inside this $100 because we're talking about resources. Just a metaphor, so people understand.
Time is the most valuable thing as an entrepreneur that you possess. And if you want to kind of, it drives some of the entrepreneurs crazy when I ask them to do this. I say, look, I want you to take 3 or 4 days and I want you to do a 15-minute time log for me. Write it down every 15 minutes. What were you working on? And they're like, Jim, that's crazy. I'm like, no. I want to know.
See,
I want to know. And it's not for me. It's for them. Because what you find out are what are the things that you are prioritizing in your day. And are those the things that you should be focusing on at this stage of your business? Right. And it's very enlightening, because time is the most valuable thing. I can't tell you, you talk about entrepreneurs earlier about coming to you after they made all this investment. They kind of, let's use an expression, they wasted some time, along with some money, right?
And money.
Time and money, right? Precious resources. Yeah. And I'm just amazed at the number of entrepreneurs that come to me so late, too late. And in the thing that I made I did a talk not too long ago on this, on the value of what I refer to as a circle of advisors. In the early stages of your entrepreneurial journey, even before you start designing your product and services, pick the 4, 5, 6 different advisors that you trust to give you good counsel and who are willing to,
and you're willing to take it,
willing to challenge you in the different areas of expertise in there. That's the reason they're there, because they can give you expertise that you don't possess. That value of that circle of advisors is invaluable. Okay. And by doing that, and to use your point, you got to be willing to listen. You got to be willing to take good counsel, even when it hurts, even when you don't like the medicine you're being given, right? It doesn't taste good. You got to be willing to take it, because they're there for your best interest. They're there to see you be successful. And so I tell that to a lot of entrepreneurs whenever I'm working with them, because I love mentorship. I love giving good counsel to entrepreneurs, but I ask them all the time, give me the people who are in your circle of advisors. Who are they? What's their background? Who would you go to when you have these problems? Right? Because I'm gonna be there for a short period and then I'm gonna be gone, and you still need your counsels. Right? So this is really, really critical in this phase. You said something else earlier that I want to touch on, and it's really when we were talking about the first $1 million. And when you get to the $1 million, by that time, you've kind of figured out the things that people want to buy from you, the things that they value. and you're beginning to now ask, you've exited past what I refer to as the stability stage. You've kind of got the launch phase and you're in the stability phase, right? And so you should be thinking about, well, how do I grow? Not scale, but how do I grow? And the distinction between scaling and growing, if I'm going to grow, I have to know that as my revenue goes up, so do my expenses. They're in parallel with each other. Okay, they're in parallel, which is fine. The reason I'm bringing that up is because as you enter into stability and you're just rinsing and repeating and you're doing these things over and over and over again, and you're thinking, okay, now I want to grow, ask yourself the question, where is the cash going to come from to fund the growth? Because a lot of people don't think about growth as expensive, right? That this is going to cost me something.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And so I'll use an example. When in any of my companies that I wanted to grow, I knew I needed cash. And so I said, okay, well, where's that cash going to come from? Maybe it's going to come out of my own pocket. So myself and other partners are going to put cash into the business to fund growth. That's one way. The second way was I'm going to go to the bank and I'm going to finance my accounts receivable because I had recurring receivables, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in recurring receivables that had value. Well, I could get the cash from the receivable early and use that capital to help me fund growth, right? So in effect, I was kind of borrowing my margin, right? It cost me a little bit, but it wasn't, that cost was a very effective way to get access to my margin quicker so that I could go fund growth. Okay. The third way is debt, where you can look and say, okay, now I have a business that's $1 million, $1.5 million, $2 million a year company. And there's a very particular, I'll say formula, it's called the debt service coverage ratio that you can go execute against your business and decide and determine how much can I borrow and pay for with the cash flow in the company. Okay. So those are three ways that you can think about how am I going to fund growth? And that just means I'm doing more of what the customers have already proven they want to buy from us. Right. And I just want to do more of it. Okay.
Follow us for more interviews with the world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.